The Rambam gave us a list of people who have no share in the world to come. Perek Gimel Halacha Vav Ein Lem Chelek L'Olam Haba, a min. And yesterday we learned about the 5 people who are considered minim. And most of these are people who have a state of denial about God. God doesn't exist, or he exists, but he's not the only God, or he exists and he's the only God, but he has a body. We learned the Machlokas Rambam and Ravad about that yesterday. All these things deal with your belief in God. Perek Gimel Halacha Ches. Shlosha Heim Hanekroyim Apikursim. There are 3 people that halacha considers apikursim. Now, this is a word that gets thrown around very cheaply. Oh, you're not b'kayvus for saying that. Oh, you believe in that, you're not b'kayvus. Okay, these are things that get thrown around cheaply because things are used cheaply today. People want to make up things. They say, you're not allowed to do this, it's Yehorig Val Yava. You're not allowed to do this, it's Yehorig Val Yava. During certain, when they have elections here in this country, you can drive through certain neighborhoods. They got signs up saying, voting is your Horig Val Yava. I don't know if I go to Shulchan Aruch, it's not one of the cases of your Horig Val Yava. But people take Torah, holy concepts in the Torah, and use it like a mantra. It's like a saying. You don't believe in what I believe in, you're not b'kayvus. Well, what is it not b'kayvus? The Rambam says some very interesting things here, and the Kesef Mishnah has some difficulty in finding the source for this Rambam, but this is what the Rambam says. There are 3 people, if they do or believe in certain things, they are apikursim. Someone denies that there's such a thing called prophecy. A bunch of nonsense. God does not communicate with human beings. The whole idea of Nevuah is nonsense. All these books in Nevi'im, a bunch of nonsense, made up stuff. God didn't reveal himself to Yeshaya, Cheskel, Yirmiyah, that no such thing as prophecy. And the Rambam adds, there is no information system by which God transmits information to a man's heart. The Rambam says, someone says that there's no prophecy, and there's no way that God transmits information from him to the heart of a man. Completely denies that God communicates with a human being. We're going to leave it at Nevuah. That's one. A person believes that, he's not b'kayvus. Someone denies, this doesn't say contradicts, it doesn't say sosa. He denies the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, yeah, there's such a thing as Nevuah. Yeah, there's such thing as prophecy. Yeah, there's such thing as God communicating with man. But Moshe was like any other Navi. He denies the pasuk v'loikam Navi oid b'Yisrael k'Moshe. He denies the idea that there never was a greater Navi and never will be a greater Navi than Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, in Hilchos Malachim, the Rambam says, who is Mashiach? Rambam says Mashiach is a person that's going to be wiser than Shlomo, even though till now Shlomo was the wisest man in history, but Mashiach will be wiser than Shlomo and almost as big a Navi as Moshe. But even Mashiach, he will not be as big a Navi as Moshe. There was one Moshe in Nevuah, and that's it. Someone that denies that, and in there, we'll see at the end, can be but to say that some guy is not b'kayvus is not negeya really. But a person that says Muhammad was a greater Navi than Moshe, or Yashka was a greater Navi than Moshe, is not b'kayvus. So if a Jew believes that Yashka is a greater Navi than Moshe, or Muhammad is a greater Navi than Moshe, he becomes not b'kayvus. Or a person says that God does not know everything that a person does. You can go into some dark room somewhere, you can go to Mars or go somewhere, and God will not know what you're doing. These are the 3 people apikursim. A person who denies Nevuah, a person that believes in Nevuah but believes Moshe is just like any other Navi, he's not special, or a person that says God doesn't know everything that you're doing, Anybody that believes in one of these two things is an apikoros. So if a person decides that he wants to vote in an Israeli election, and you call him an apikoros, you're stamanar. There's no halacha that says such a person is apikoros, and you have to ask the person mechila. There is no such thing as apikoros in halacha right now, except for these three inyanim in the Rambam, according to the Rambam. Shlosha heim hakofim b'Torah. Sometimes we throw this around also. He's a kaifa b'Torah. Okay? I don't like what he's doing. He's a kaifa b'Torah. What's a kaifa b'Torah? These are terms of art. So the Rambam says, if a person says that every single letter in the Torah didn't come from Hashem, it's all from Hashem except Moshe Rabbeinu added a vav somewhere. If a person believes in such a thing, he is a kaifa in the whole Torah. He's a kaifa in the whole Torah. He can be a shomer Torah u'mitzvahs 100%. He keeps 72 minutes for Rabbeinu Tam. He puts on 2 pairs of tefillin, everything. But he says, there's like an extra word or an extra letter here in the Torah that really, he's a kaifa in the whole Torah. If he says Moshe Rabbeinu himself wrote this letter, he's a kaifa b'Torah. V'chein ha-kaifa b'perusha, someone that denies the pirush, in other words, our Torah shebal peh, v'hu Torah shebal peh, the Rambam says. Somebody says that, this is the kind of stukim and baitusim. This is what we would call today, not the Jews, Reform theology, or the conservative theology, which we're going to get to in a moment as well. Zakayf and Torah shebal peh. Who said that that you're not allowed to drive your car on Shabbos? Who said such a thing? It doesn't say such thing in the Torah. Who says that you can't be boirer on Shabbos? Who says you can't take bad out of good food on Shabbos? There a pasuk in the Torah that says that? Well, the Gemara learns out the Lamed Tes Malachas. The Gemara, there's a Gemara. The Gemara, somebody made up the Gemara. Some human beings decided they're going to interpret the Torah in a certain way. In other words, this person is kaifer in the Messiah. There is no Messiah of Moshe taught Yeshua. And the Torah then has nothing to it. What does tefillin mean? Tie it on your hands and put a totafas on your head. What am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. Somebody must have known what to do. When the Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe, he said, Moshe, now I want to tell you. The thing on the hand is a box, and then as parashias, and the thing on the head is a box that has 4 separations as parashias, and this is the color, and this is the shape, and this is how you do it. He taught him all the halachas, and in summary, he said, right, otherwise we have no Torah. We have no basis for fasting on Yom Kippur. It says, you shall pain your soul. The Gemara goes through a whole sugya in Yoma. How do you know you have to fast Yom Kippur? It says, you shall pain your soul. The Gemara says, you can pain your soul. Maybe you have to sit on a chair that has thumbtacks on it on Yom Kippur. You have to pain yourself. How do you know pain yourself means not to eat? We don't know almost anything in Torah Shebiksav except for Torah Shebal Peh. So if someone is kaifa in the pirush of Torah Shebiksav, the written law, and that's Torah Shebal Peh, he denies its authenticity. He is a kaifa b'Torah. V'hamakish magideha. He denies those who interpreted the Torah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon, Hillel, anybody that we have as a part of our Messiah. He denies that they are authentic Bali Messiah. He's going Tzaddik Ubaisis, like Tzaddik Ubaisis from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And Tignes Sochel, the Mishnah says in Avos, taught his Talmidim that when you serve God, don't serve him for a reward. So Tzaddik and Baisis heard this shir, and they said, the Rebbe just said, don't serve God for a reward, serve God for love. Now, a person dedicates his whole life to serve God. What do you mean serve him without a reward? Who works a whole life and doesn't expect a reward? It must be what the Rebbe meant was serve God out of love, because there is no reward. This whole Olam Haba business is not true. It's fake. And the Rebbe is really sending us a message. Serve Hashem because you love him, because there's no reward. Otherwise, logically, nobody dedicates his life to something and doesn't expect a reward. From there came Tzaddik U'Baisis, etc., and the whole kfira, the whole denial of the Shalshelis HaMasayra of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's a kaifa b'Torah. V'oimer shahabayre hechlef mitzvah zu b'mitzvah acheres ukvar batla Torah zu afal pi shihoisem im Hashem. This sounds very familiar to us. Somebody says the Rebbeinu Shalom gave Jewish people 613 mitzvahs. All the 613 mitzvahs were from Hashem. But as time went on, things changed, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu switched things. Shabbos today means something other than it meant when Moshe was here. Modern technology, people live in the suburbs, and in order to get to shul, they need to drive a car, and we adapt the Torah to the modern times. And the Rebbeinu Shalom switched things. Or there's this mitzvah in the Torah of you have to wear tefillin. That was from Moshe Rabbeinu's time. Today, you don't have to wear tefillin. Today, it's more important to have a good Jewish heart and to give charity. That's what makes you Jewish today. A person says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was hechlef mitzvah zu b'mitzvah acheres. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a switch of mitzvahs. They're not, in other words, the bottom line here is a person says the 613 mitzvahs were not given to Moshe eternally. They are not eternal truth. They're based on generational truth. They're based upon societal truth, and they can change. Such a person is a kaifa b'Torah. There are plenty of tshuvas in the Igros Moshe of Moshe Feinstein about conservative and reform clergymen, about they're not permitted to be Eidim at a chasana and all the things they're not permitted, and they're not kosher to do a gerus, all these things because they're poshet kaifa b'Torah. They deny the eternal validity of the Torah, and they say, yeah, that was true then, it's not true today, it was good then, not good today. You talk like that, you're a kaifa b'Torah and a kaifa b'Torah. Forget about, you're not a rabbi, you're nothing. You have no chelik in Olam Haba. Now, in my print that I scanned to everybody, we have two words here which are not in the regular prints of the Rambam, because in the censored prints of the Rambam, which we had for so many centuries, they took out the word Yeshuim. They took out the word the Jesus followers. The Jews who are Jesus followers are kaifrei b'Torah, because Catholicism eventually became, you don't have to do 613 mitzvahs. Now you just got to hang on to a couple of beads and say that someone died for you, and hakol shvir v'kayim. That is a kaifa b'Torah. So in your print, you have to go in hayeshuim v'hahagim. Kol echad mishloisha elu kaifa b'Torah. Any one of these type of three people is a kaifa b'Torah. A person says that even one letter of the Torah Moshe wrote, but it wasn't Hashem. Or a person says he denies that the Pirush, the explanation of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, or those who explained it, he denies their validity and authenticity. And a person that says that the mitzvahs are not eternal and mitzvahs have changed over time. Anybody that Chas v'Shalom believes in one of these three things is a kaifa b'Torah. And as we mentioned, this is going in the Rambam Hilchos Teshuvah. The Rambam said not only do you do teshuvah for things you did that you shouldn't do, and for things you didn't do that you should do, the Rambam told us teshuvah is also to clean up your brain to make sure you're thinking properly. So, Chas v'Shalom, someone has any of these ideas, the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah is telling you better clean up these ideas in your head, because if you have these ideas, the Rambam told us in Halacha Vav, these are people that have no chelik in Olam Haba. And this is consistent with the Rambam at the end of Masechta Sanhedrin. The Rambam wrote the Shlosha Osa Ikarim, the 13 principles of faith, from which were written the Ani Mamins. And the Rambam at the end of Sanhedrin says that if a person believes in these 13 principles, but he did terrible aveirus in his life, he goes to Gehenna or whatever, and God will purge him of all his sins, but he's going to Olam Haba. But the Rambam says, a person that was shomer Torah mitzvahs perfectly his whole life, but denies any of these 13 principles, he has no chelik in olam haba. So this is consistent with the Rambam. The Rambam in Halacha Vav says the following people have no share in the world to come. And right now what we're talking about is, we're not talking about people who did anything. We're talking about people who believe in certain things. They believe that God has a body, or they believe that Moshe wasn't greater. He was just another Navi like anybody else. Or a person believes that the Torah is not eternal, and things can change based upon the times and based upon society and based upon popularity. The kaifa b'Torah, no olam haba. So we're not dealing now with people who have done anything. We're dealing now with people who think something they shouldn't be thinking, a crooked hashkafa. So the Rambam tells us a person does averos, they'll get cleaned up in Gehenna as long as he understands the true 13 principles. On the other hand, a person who's completely shomer Torah mitzvahs and messes up in his hashkafa, in these 13 principles, is ein lo chelek lo olam haba.